Right, here we are with the new 2011 MacBook Pro. This is the 17-inch 2.2 gig model. I thought we'd just have a quick look at some of the things that I found that are slightly unusual about it. So let's have a look at about this Mac to start with. Okay, as you can see, it's the 2.2 gig i7, so it's a quad core, 8 gig of RAM, and we'll look at some of the hardware now. Right, the first thing I noticed, by the way, if you pop into the software piece, you'll see now that it defaults into booting into the 64-bit mode, which is a new thing. My old 2010 i7 didn't. It didn't boot into 64-bit. It was the 32-bit extensions. Okay, we'll just have a quick look at the hardware here. The other thing that sticks out, if we look at the serial ATA, there we go. You'll see that I've got an SSD and a physical drive. I've taken out the super drive. But one thing that is interesting, see down here, it now supports SATA 6, which is it's twice the speed of the SATA 3. That would be good for some of the new SSDs that are coming out. Let's have a look what else. Well, there's the Thunderbolt option, of course. Haven't really used that as yet. I haven't actually got any Thunderbolt devices, but be interested to see what happens with that. So what else is interesting? Well, there's the graphics. Now, as this is a 17-inch, it's got the 1 gig Radeon card in there. Now, I'm connected to an external monitor at the moment, one of the cinema displays. That's why it's listed down the bottom there. And then you've got the Intel chip built in. Well, that's the hardware. So how does it perform? Well, firstly, let's have a look at the Windows performance. I've got on this screen here. This is my boot camp machine. I've booted up in virtual at the moment, but it's still valid for this. Let's have a look at the performance index from there. There we go. Now, of course, it'll say it needs refreshing because I'm currently virtualized, but that's the performance index from running natively in boot camp. It's pretty impressive, I think you'll agree. So let's pop out of that, and what I'll do now is I'll switch to my normal Office virtual machine, which is on that screen. Okay, so this is a pure Parallels 6 virtualized Win 7, so let's have a look at the performance on this one. There we go, so we get a 5.5, so we're losing there on the memory. The memory's slightly slower, so let's pop across to the boot camp one again. There you go. So the memory's a bit faster on the boot camp, on the physical one, as opposed to on the virtualized. Okay, it's still very impressive. In terms of general performance, well, in the virtual machine, let's fire up stuff: Excel, Word, Visio. A lot of this, of course, is because of the SSD rather than the brute force of the i7 quad core. The one thing I will say is that it obviously scales a lot better than the previous dual core. I appear to be able to do a lot more before the performance is impacted. Here we are back on the boot camp machine that's been virtualized. Does anybody actually answer that and do that? I just always click ask me later. So as you can see, the performance it's pretty awesome actually. It scales incredibly well compared to the previous, but you know, the previous version was pretty powerful as well. Okay, so back into the Mac piece, let's have a look at Activity Monitor. First thing you'll notice under the CPU piece, you only have a single CPU showing, even though the unit is a quad core. Now it's quad core with hyper-threading, so if we pop back into our Windows machine, get rid of that rubbish, have a look at our Task Manager, you'll see that in Windows it actually shows up all four cores, but with hyper-threading it will show up 8. Okay, it should show us the same on the boot camp as well. There we go. So you see all 8 cores, all 4 cores, sorry, but with hyper-threading. So, like I say, in Task Manager it does, in Activity Monitor it doesn't. It just shows us the single usage. System memory in my unit's 8 gig. I've got a couple of 2 gig virtual machines running right now. Memory usage is still pretty good. Same with the disk. I've got 2 disks in here, a 240 gig SSD, but it's partitioned for boot camp, that's why it's a bit smaller there, and also a bigger storage 1 terabyte drive. It's a very, very capable system in this, guys. Okay, well, let's fire up a couple of apps on here. In fact, Firefox is already running, so let's do that. Safari, it's Firefox, let's fire up, I don't know, Excel. Yeah, it's very, very capable. Aperture is also incredibly fast on this compared to my previous one. So if I just fire up Aperture, now bear in mind my Aperture library now is about 150 gig. And bear in mind also, I'm also running 2 virtual machines at the moment as well. Let's get this stuff out of the way. Okay, so there's my 150 gig Aperture library. As you can see, the scrolling speed on it now is just fantastic, and working through everything. So let's have a quick look. There's Paris photos. These are all raw photos, by the way. Now the other thing to bear in mind, the Aperture library is on the SATA drive, it's not on the SSD, so it's not as if you're seeing the performance of the SSD here. As you can see, it's very, very impressive. Well, it's early days for the unit. I've only just got it, but so far I'm more than impressed with it. It's incredibly fast. It's very capable, and the virtualization is just awesome. Anyway, hope you find that useful.